I was in this half state between sleep and wake, and I could see very, very clearly where my life was going. I knew that I did not want to live the way I had been living. I saw myself clearly. I saw who I was and what I had become. And I knew I wanted out. And out meant two things. One of two things. It meant somehow either getting better, changing, or it meant leaving. And those were both options for me. It was at that moment in the hotel room that I made a choice. I wanted to try getting up. That's what I wanted to try first.
Lauren Slater continuó viviendo con la depresión incrustada en su cerebro. No es la tristeza ocasional que todos podemos sentir, sino una enfermedad crónica y confusa.
We are still struggling to understand what goes wrong in the brain to cause depression. Because depression can have profound symptoms. It can change lives. It can lead people to end their lives. And yet, when we look at the brain of a depressed person, we don't see any holes in it, any obvious lesions. I mean, it's far different from many other disorders.
We don't know what causes it. We don't have a pathology of it like we do for Alzheimer's disease or Parkinson's disease. So all we have at the present time is we have a collection of clinical signs and symptoms.
To feel depressed, to me, is to feel dead. It's to feel that all of the things in your life that gave you comfort and meaning, they're no longer even familiar. Deadness, terror, horror, distorted time. It's the ultimate isolation. It's the ultimate wordlessness, which is why it's so hard to talk about it.
Una imagen captura lo que sus palabras no pueden. El cerebro deprimido. No hay daño físico aparente, pero para los científicos, su existencia es claramente visible en patrones de actividad cerebral. La corteza prefrontal, la parte del cerebro mediante la cual nos relacionamos y entendemos al mundo, ha crecido floja y silenciosamente. El núcleo emocional del cerebro envía señales a la corteza prefrontal, llenándola de químicos que llevan mensajes emocionales, pero la corteza prefrontal solo puede hacer intentos tentativos por responder.
There should be a constant interplay between what we feel and what we think. But in the state of intense depression, the balance between emotion and feelings and thinking and reasoning becomes out of whack.
Cualquiera puede deprimirse, pero la depresión crónica e inflexible parece ser hereditaria. Pasa a través de los genes de generación en generación, una vulnerabilidad que puede ser incrementada por experiencias traumáticas del principio de nuestras vidas.
Looking at my family history, you can see that depression runs through the family tree. My father has definitely struggled with depression, and his mother and his father suffered as well. So I know that it's there and it goes back. I also think, though, that the environment had a really significant role in how those genetic tendencies or inevitabilities were played out. There were episodes of violence, of pretty serious violence, where there would be punching, hitting, pulling by the hair, a lot of cruelty, a lot of humiliation, and it was like that day after day after day.
We know that there are critical periods in childhood when the brain is remarkably plastic. And one of the consequences of early trauma, it's very likely that the brain does not form the normal connections that it normally would, and it's going to have consequences in adulthood.
La mayoría de las personas que experimentan depresión no sufrieron de abusos durante su infancia. Pero Charles Nemeroff cree que el abuso físico, sexual e incluso emocional puede hacer que el cerebro sea anormalmente sensible al estrés y más tarde puede hacer que las personas sean más vulnerables a la depresión. Los científicos han descubierto que las personas con depresión con frecuencia producen demasiada cortisol, la hormona del estrés.
Many conceptualize depression as the stress response gone awry. Stress is really an event that should be very time limited. You're exposed to a stressor, your stress hormone should be released and they should turn off very quickly.
Pero en el cerebro de una persona deprimida, el estrés estimula demasiada cortisol durante mucho tiempo. La exposición crónica a esta hormona normal del estrés puede ser tóxica para el cerebro.
You can think of it almost as leaving a scar, as changing the brain, as making the brain more vulnerable to subsequent depressions.
After my experience in that motel room, I really worked hard to pull it together. I tried to live without symptoms. I tried to live without collapsing. It was boot camp for a year. Absolute boot camp. I had charts, lists, this and that, anything to just get myself on the right road. Huge amount of sweat equity went into that effort, and it didn't work. And when it didn't work, I was ready, really ready to throw in the towel. And I wasn't just a year, it was those 10 years preceding it. I was exhausted. So suicide was a welcoming thought to me. People kill themselves when they are depressed as a way of trying to spare themselves from unremitting and unrelenting pain. Suicide is one viable cure for depression. That's how the depressed person sees it. But there's this tenacious part of not only me but all of us. We want to live. So I called the psychiatrist that I had been seeing, and she said to me, there's this new drug on the market and I think we should try it. It's called Prozac. And my response to that was, I don't want another drug. And yet when the psychiatrist offered me a possible way out, I immediately jumped for it. And so I tried it. You know, swallow a little biochemical missile and boom, kaboom, you're changed.
The brain contains 100 billion cells, neurons, and they make 100 trillion connections or synapses. And each of the neurons release chemical substances called neurotransmitters. And these neurotransmitters are the legal tender of the brain. That's how these cells communicate with each other.
Mientras los neurotransmisores fluyen por el cerebro como un río, enviando una corriente constante de información entre las regiones emocionales y pensantes del cerebro, solo unos pocos miligramos de un antidepresivo como Prozac, Zoloft o Paxil pueden afectar rápida y radicalmente uno de ellos, la serotonina, el químico que influencia los estados de ánimo. En la brecha sináptica entre las neuronas, donde la serotonina lleva los mensajes de una célula a otra, se halla una serie de moléculas que funcionan como compuertas en un canal, regulando el flujo de serotonina, determinando sus subidas y bajadas. En el cerebro deprimido, la serotonina con frecuencia está en su nivel mínimo. Un antidepresivo puede tapar la entrada de algunas de estas compuertas moleculares, forzando a que los niveles de serotonina se eleven en los espacios vacíos entre las células. Este cambio ocurre en todo el cerebro, pero especialmente en la corteza prefrontal.
And the fact that it occurs in the prefrontal cortex, I think, is very intriguing, since this is the very area that people would have guessed would be a critical area in being able to regulate your mood, for the brain to be able to get itself back on track.
Los altos niveles de serotonina estimulan una cascada de reacciones que le devuelven el balance al cerebro. A las pocas semanas, los síntomas de la depresión misteriosamente desaparecen.
What we really want to understand is that last step, that last bit, that change in the wiring, so that the I'm no good changes to maybe things are not so bad. And that is going to take an enormous amount of progress in neuroscience. But when we understand that, we're going to understand very, very important things about what it means to be human, how things go wrong, and how things can go right.
When I first went on Prozac for the first 6 months, were probably the best 6 months of my life. Suddenly I could feel. I could feel pleasure, I could feel happiness, I could feel sadness. It was like this whole range of possibilities. I was walking around stunned. My senses were very different. Colors were different. My taste buds were different. My tongue was different. This world was suddenly open to me that I had never really explored before. There are no words to convey how unbelievable that experience was. How much happiness I had.
Han pasado 12 años desde que Lauren halló el alivio para la depresión. Desde entonces, ha trabajado para reconstruir su vida. Recibió un doctorado en psicología en Harvard. Se casó y tuvo una hija.
In my more reductive moments, I tend to think, alter serotonin transmission, alter the person, beginning and end of story. But the story, of course, always gets more complicated.
You really are, one of the miracle stories here for this treatment.
I've been on this now for 12 years, and I always feel like, my big concern is that I'm on borrowed time with it. And I know that
it's a borrowed decade.
A borrowed decade, more than a decade
right.
now, borrowed decade plus 2 years, which is good, but I have to say, I don't know that I'm a Prozac wonder story. I mean, because, because I started on 10 milligrams and am now, 8 times that, which is why I'm suspicious of the drug. I am very suspicious of the drug.
But Lauren,
although I also, of course, am half in love with it, but I am suspicious of it.
The fact that you've been on the stuff, it's been your mainstay, you've been free of symptoms most of the time, we've been able to get you freer of symptoms when you've become symptomatic, is both a nifty thing and one that's unfortunately a little rare in the treatment of chronic severe depression. One rarely sees a depression as severe as yours, which remits as fully as yours has.
I thought, now I have this drug and it's great. I thought I actually had it licked. But then it became a much more complicated relationship. It became I became an unreliable lover. One who had the capacity to save me and yet who could leave me at any moment utterly stranded.
Lauren no está curada de la depresión. Las drogas tan solo alivian los síntomas. Y como una infección que resiste un antibiótico, el cerebro de Lauren periódicamente comienza a resistir el antidepresivo. Tiene recaídas. Las dosis deben ser incrementadas. Deben ser halladas drogas diferentes. Los pacientes lo llaman la falla del Prozac.
My biggest fear with Prozac Poop Out now is that now that I have a child, it's no longer just me. And I'm afraid that I will not be able to function as a parent. And that will obviously have repercussions for my daughter.
Lauren siempre necesitará de medicamentos que la ayuden a continuar con su vida, simplemente para ir a trabajar cada día. Pero ahora ve más allá de su propio sufrimiento para ayudar a otros.
I think when I was young, I thought I was just lazy. And I think everyone else thought I was just lazy. But it's like when you're at the dentist office and you get like that lead cape put on you. When I'm depressed, I feel like I always have it on.
Now what you're telling me, okay, is that you're...
Valiéndose de su propia experiencia con la depresión, Lauren se ha convertido en una psicóloga practicante y guía a pacientes de una clínica comunitaria en Boston.